In this episode, Blackmore's Night, Uriah Heep and Widowmaker.
Okay, this one is going to be interesting, and I'm pretty sure will generate one or two comments when people see it and hear it. This album is just about getting, or may just have had, its 25-year remaster issue. I'm pretty sure it's out now. I'm sure it was out a few weeks ago. Technically speaking, the 25-year thing should have been last year, but I'm not sure that it came out everywhere in the year that we're talking about, which is 1997. 1997 was the year that I got it, and I got it from Japan. And I think it was released in Japan a little bit earlier than it was released here, where I said maybe towards the back end of 1997 when it came out. At the time, it was a thing that flabbergasted the rock world completely. It still does to a certain degree. It caused a lot of discussion amongst fans of a certain band that many people know I have a little bit of an interest in. And you've probably all figured out now that I'm talking about Blackmore's Night, Shadow of the Moon, which was the first Blackmore's Night album, which came out in 1997. Now, if we go back to 1997, I'll just give you a bit of a quick idea about what had been going on. Blackmore obviously left Purple a good 4 years or so before that, and he'd done the new Rainbow album, Stranger in Assault, which had gone down really well. A lot of people really hard and heavy hitting album, which a lot of people were really sort of happy with, and it was a direction that they fully expected Blackmore to keep going in for a number of years. I think probably the rest of the band did as well, because I mean some of the gigs they did and the tours they were good, and the singer Doogie White could handle all of the old stuff, so especially the Dio stuff, and he could even do some of the Purple stuff as well, which made it a really interesting license. There's some great Rainbow live albums around from that time, official and unofficial. I've got a cupboard for what I've got a lot from those Doogie Watchers, and they're all really good. And there is one that is officially, I think, Rock Palace, or anyway, somewhere in Germany maybe, but it's out as a double album or a DVD. It might even be a treble album. But anyway, it's really good. That's where we all thought Blackmore was going to be for a few years. Now, again, remember 1997, the internet was still relatively sort of new. It wasn't a case where everybody took a mobile phone out of their pocket, went on the internet to check everything up. Nobody really knew what was going on until it came on the news, or you sort of read it in the newspaper or something. And I certainly at that point wasn't involved in any sort of big sort of like online groups like I am now, to do with music and with Deep Purple especially, and all that sort of stuff, because they didn't exist, or if they did, I didn't know about them. So you were just still in those days reliant on the music press for what you were going to find out about stuff. And so I had no idea about Blackmore's Night. Now, at the time, I used to go to a record fair in a town near where I lived, and I had a chap there who used to bring me things. In those days, you could openly sell bootlegs without any real fear of too much problem. And let's just quickly say, a bootleg, for those that don't know, bootleg to me anyway, a bootleg is usually a live performance, but it's stuff that isn't commercially available anywhere. So it isn't, I don't think it's sticking off anybody. All right, yeah, the artist maybe doesn't get any money out of it, but does the artist get any money out of it when they make a jigsaw puzzle in one? I don't know. But anyway, bootlegs are okay as far as I'm concerned. I've got tons. And what they do is they make you want to collect more. And they make you want to then collect more of that musician's music. The amount of Deep Purple bootlegs, and they've eventually, because so many people wanted them on bootleg and couldn't get hold of them because there were so few copies around, have ended up getting released officially. So I'm never going to sit here and let people say to me that bootlegs have adversely affected, especially Deep Purple, because I don't think they have, because, all right, they might not make any money out of the bootleg, but the bootleg has led to so many live albums. I can't think of a band that's put out more live albums than Deep Purple. But anyway, we're going off the track. We're not supposed to be talking about Deep Purple. We're talking about Blackmore's not. But the point is, anyway, this bloke used to keep things aside from me. And what he used to do, he used to bring them to the record fair and keep them under the counter and say, right, these are the things I've got this week that you might be interested in. Do you want any of them? And I'd say, well, yeah, I'll have them. And if I didn't want them, he'd go, okay, and then he'd stick them in the rack for everybody else to have a look at. That was the sort of setup that we got. He knew he was going to get some sales out of me. I very rarely didn't want anything that he got out because he knew what I wanted. So anyway, I'll turn up at this record fair and he gets this package and he puts this CD in this portable CD player, and it starts. And he's always been clever because he's not put it on track 1. He's put it on track 4, 5, 6, whatever it was. It's instrumental, and of course straight away, I don't claim to be a guitar expert or anything. I don't even play the thing, but I know the sound of the guitar players I listen to, and I'll be able to pick out Richie Blackmore any day. And after about 4 notes, I was like, Richie Blackmore? Well, what is it? Anyway, I'll listen to this. That's the next track. And then there's just this woman starts singing. And I thought, well, what is it? What's he doing? He's just sort of like guesting on some folk album or something. And he went, no, he says, I've got this through from my sources in Japan. And he passes me this Japanese CD with all the old Obi strip and all that on it and everything. And there's Richie Blackmore with like a loot over his shoulder and this woman, which obviously is Candice Knight, his then girlfriend, now sort of wife. And he says this is his new band. He's not Rainbow on the Head. He says, I've only got one of these. He says, I don't know when it's coming out over here. He says, but it's already due to be out in Japan. He said, so I got one off one of my suppliers. I thought you'd want one. Anyway, so yeah. So anyway, I took it home and I put it on and I couldn't believe it. It was like Richie Blackmore's turned into a folk musician. To me, at the time, almost overnight, because it wasn't expected at all. Whereas now, of course, if anybody was going to do anything like that, you'd hear about it 6 months before on the internet. Everybody would be talking about it, and then we go, what's it going to be like? But nobody was talking about this. Certainly not in the circles that I was moving in. Nobody knew anything about it. They were just wondering when the next Rainbow album was going to come out, because don't forget, in those days, people only made a record every 3 years. And so we weren't even really due it for another year. And even after this, which I think a lot of us still thought, well, he'll do Rainbow as well as this. He won't just do this. But I thought it was great. It was like I could sort of tell. Again, I'm not trying to put myself out as an expert, but you could just tell how much he was enjoying playing it from the sound of his fingers on the strings or whatever. I don't know how to describe it, but you just thought, well, you know what? This is what he wants to do, and he's Richie Blackmore playing a guitar. I'll sit and listen to Richie Blackmore playing a guitar. I don't care whether he's playing rock music or whether he's playing folk music. It's good. Candice Knight's got a perfectly good voice. She might not be the most powerful voice in the world. You might be able to list plenty of people who may be technically better than her, but she's good, and Richie Blackmore wants to be in a band with her. So that's it. I don't see why people gave him such a hard time about it, really, because if that's what he wanted to do, let's take another one of the big 70s bands, Led Zeppelin, Jimmy Page. What's Jimmy Page done since Led Zeppelin? He made one solo album. Well, he did that film soundtrack, he did Death Wish thing. Then he did one solo album, which was good but patchy, you've got to say. I only got 2 or 3 different singers on it for a start off. Then he did The Firm. Well, he did The Firm before that solo album. No, yeah, I think he did. Anyway, The Firm with Paul Rodgers didn't quite work out, did it? some of the songs were quite good. I went to the whole of the UK tour, and because they decided they weren't going to play any Led Zeppelin songs, they weren't going to play any Free songs, they weren't going to play any Bad Company songs. They struggled for material, really. They had to stretch out quite a few songs and do a few others that they probably wouldn't have done. It's something that could have worked if it had been thought through a little bit better, but it didn't pan out. The two albums they made were okay, but they're not anywhere near the top of Paul Rodgers' catalogue in my mind. But again, I'm veering off the subject here. And then he did that, and then he did a couple of albums of Robert Plant again, didn't he? But he's done virtually nothing. Now, I'd rather Richard Blackmore play folk music than nothing. So, again, I don't get why people gave him such a hard time about it. I went to quite a few live shows, and they were good. They were entertaining. Yeah, people went dressed up as Henry VIII or whatever, or in their sort of like court jester's outfit. But it was fun. That's what it's supposed to be. Music is supposed to be fun. I saw Richard Blackmore having more fun on stage in Blackmore's Night than I ever saw him have in latter days of sort of Deep Purple or Rainbow and stuff. He was actually enjoying himself while he was doing this, and it was good. And the albums were good. This album is brilliant. There's some great tracks. There's some great instrumentals on it. There's some great, nice songs on it. I'm not going to go through song by song, which is what I was initially going to do. I'm just going to say go and listen to it because it's good. If Richie Blackmore is, to me, the greatest rock guitarist in the world, to hear him playing something else different, to me, that's good because I'm not going to turn around and say he'd be the greatest folk guitarist in the world. I probably would think he would be, but people who know more about folk music will be able to turn around and give me a whole list of acoustic guitar players who probably better at that type of guitar playing than Richie Blackmore is, and he will probably be the first one to admit that as well. But the point of the matter is, I don't think that I would have gone out and bought an album like this if it hadn't have had somebody like Richie Blackmore. And then because I like that, that's then allowed me to get into other sort of folky stuff that maybe I wouldn't have got into before. This sort of gave me a bit more of an appreciation of straight up folk music, if you like, in the same way that listening to John Lord's classical solo albums allowed me a greater understanding, if you like, of listening to classical music, whereas to me before listening to classical music was a bit boring. But now I'm listening out for things when I do listen to classical music now, because I'm sort of thinking about bits that have been used, if you like, ideas or ways into sort of the structure of some rock songs, I think. So to me, in many ways, was a doorway into that more folky type of stuff. And now I'll quite happily go along to a folk club and listen to people playing folk music, old folk music and new folk music as well. Whereas before this, I probably might have sort of dismissed it as, nah, that's not my thing. It's worthwhile. It's worthwhile music. A good musician is always a good musician, no matter what he's playing. And this is good stuff. So anybody who's going to say to me, oh, I'm the biggest Richard Blackmore fan in the world, but I can't stand that Blackmore's Night rubbish, well, in that case, I don't think you are the greatest Richard Blackmore fan in the world, because you would be able to appreciate what he's doing and why he's doing it and why he wants to do it. And yeah, you don't have to like it. You don't have to pretend that you think it's brilliant, but what you have to say is, it's not really my cup of tea. It's not my style. I don't really like listening to it. But don't say it's rubbish, because it isn't. It's good. He can play the guitar. She can sing. The whole setup, yeah, alright, some people think it looks a little bit like a Christmas nativity play stuff where they have all the stage setup and stuff. But all that's to the thing. It's the entertainment value, isn't it? People are going to see something to get entertained. Well, I've been to a number of Blackmore's night gigs with varying people, and some of the people that I saw at a Blackmore's night gig, I could never see them at a Deep Purple gig. You never see them at a rainbow gig. It's you could almost sort of say Richard Blackmore could now say, well, do you know what? I don't need all that rock adoration type stuff being there because I've now got my own over here. I'm now this folk set type people. I would guess that the probably 50% of the people at least who go to see a Blackmore's Night gig don't possess a Rainbow or a Deep Purple album and probably never would want to. It's different. It's different music, but it's still the same man playing the guitar. It's still the same, so you can appreciate it. Look at a painter paints one thing and then another day he decides to go off and paint an entirely different subject, and it's a subject that you don't necessarily like. You don't just suddenly decide that person's become a bad painter because you don't like that one particular picture. You just say, well, I can see it's a good painting, but it's not my style. I'm not going to hang it on my wall. So if you're a big fan of Deep Purple and you don't like Blackmore's Night, that's fine. But you don't need to keep telling everybody, and you don't need to keep rubbishing it because that's no good to anybody, and it's pointless. It doesn't need to be rubbish because it's good. There are people out there, I'll tell you there are people out there that will listen to Blackmore's Night and say it's 10 times better than Deep Purple. In their mind. I'm not saying that, of course I'm not saying that. But what I'm saying is I can appreciate it. I don't sit here at night and think, what shall I play tonight? Shall I play Deep Purple in rock or shall I play Under a Violet Moon? If I'm in a Deep Purple in rock mood, I'll play Deep Purple in rock. People probably tell me I'm in a Deep Purple in rock mood every day, but you know what I mean. I have to be in the right mood to want to listen to Blackmore's Night, but when I do want to listen to it, it's great. When the last album came out, was it last year or the year before, and I put it on, it's almost like, I've heard this before, because they do, I'm not going to say they all sound the same, but they've got the same sort of feel about them most of the time. But when I'd finished listening to it, it didn't make me then think, I've got to go and play Burn now, because I need to hear Richard Blackmore play rock guitar. What it made me do was put another Blackmore's Night album on because I was now in that sort of a mood. And obviously, I'll admit it. After you've heard 2 or 3 of them on a trot, you probably don't want to hear the 4th one. So that's fine. But anyway, this has turned into everything that it wasn't supposed to be, because it was supposed to be talking about this album, which has just been repackaged and re-put out again as a 25-year remaster. If you haven't got it, whether you got it in England later on or whether you got one from Japan like me, get it, or at least listen to it, and don't just dismiss it as funky nonsense and Richie Blackmore dressed up like an urban, because it's not that at all. It's good and it's worth listening to, and I'm glad I've got it.
The Man in the Attic.
Hello there, and welcome to another Man in the Attic. Uriah Heep, Fallen Angel. Now, you've got to give Heep their credit. They're still going, and they've been going without a break since the late 60s. And they did have their classic period, of course, with David Byron, and their current lineup with Phil Lanson on vocals has been going for a good long while. This album, Fallen Angel, was their 12th studio album, and it was the 3rd and last one to feature John Lawton on vocals, ex of Lucifer's Friend. And I did see them a couple of times during this period at the good old Hammersmith Odeon, and the shows were always excellent, very good. What can we say about this album? Well, I looked up a few facts and figures on Wikipedia about it, and in Wikipedia they said, and I think with some justification, that they'd kind of, on this album, gone for a more, there we are again, Fallen Angel, they'd gone for a more AOR sort of approach, and I think that's a fair assessment of what we hear on this record. There's nothing terrible on it, but for me, and I'm not the biggest of Heep fans. I do have a lot of Heep albums. Not their biggest fan, but I do like them. Let's get this right. I do like them, and I've seen them a number of times. I did see them with David Byron during the 70s, and I saw them a few times with John Lawton. Didn't ever see them with Pete Golby on vocals, but I did see them at the Lyceum once when they, for a brief period, had John Sloman from Lone Star on vocals. So, fair knowledge of Heep, and there are several of their albums I really like. Of course, probably my favourite would be Demons and Wizards. But yeah, what can be said about this album? Well, I suppose inoffensive. When Wikipedia said they went for this kind of more AOR sound, I think that's right. That's what it is. It's almost, it struck me as I played it again just a short while ago before doing this. It's kind of sounded like they were beginning to aim for the kind of sound that Foreigner had. Nice layered vocals. They were always good with their harmonies, Heep, with Ken Hensley and particularly Lee Kerslake on drums. He had a very good voice. But there's nothing terribly inspirational about this album. It's I suppose functional. They've got a bunch of songs together, gone into the studio. It was 1978. This album, 1978. So yeah. They'd been going for a while, and probably they'd entered with nothing truly inspirational to record, but needed to get an album out. And I think, as I said, this was John Lawton's last album with the band after Firefly and Innocent Victim. And yeah, again, inoffensive is about the best I can manage on this. Very good bass playing by Trevor Boulder on it, but a lot of the tracks are fairly similar. They're kind of almost going for, at times with the harmony vocals, going for a sound almost like some of Queen's material. I wouldn't say there's anything, probably the standout track for me, or the most Heep-esque track on it, is on side 2, track 2, called Save It, which is a bit more guitar oriented. But don't take my word for it. It didn't exactly inspire me that much. I can't remember, other than having pulled it out now and played it for the purposes of this, the last time I listened to this, probably 20 or 30 years ago. But it's part of the collection, so it's still there. One thing I do have to say, the cover, yeah, you know, the sort of suggestion of boobs. Nah, I mean, please, no. After their excellent covers with Roger Dean during the classic period, the very heavy, very humble cover with the man covered in cobwebs, that was kind of more like it. Again, as Wikipedia described it, as going for the AOR sound rather than the more progressive rock sound of their earlier albums. I think that is a terrifically fair assessment of it. So again, nothing out of the ordinary on this. Functional, as I suppose, as much as I can say. It will sit in my collection, and the likelihood of me ever playing it again is probably quite minimal. But don't for a moment think I don't like this band. I do. I've got a great deal of affection for them, and their longevity speaks for itself. Come on, it's, you know, to be around for this long has got to say something for them. I must get some of the albums that they've done with Phil Lanson, and try and catch up with them, because I haven't really bought anything of theirs for quite some time. I can't remember the last albums I bought. Probably the ones they did with Peter Golby. I think it was Equator, something like that, or Head First. But yeah, good bass playing. It's well produced. It's got a nice sound, but it's got an inoffensive sound. Inoffensive, that word again, and that's about as good as I'm going to get for this. Heep fans among you will probably be wanting to wring my neck, but yeah, I mean, I'm like this with some of my favourite band, Deep Purple's albums. You know, I'll listen to them, you know, might pull it out once in a while and not it, but I bet even for a big Heep fan, this isn't one of the most played albums. Anyway, sorry if there's a hint of negativity on this, but perhaps we'll pull out another Heep album at some point, have a listen to that and have something more positive to say. And meanwhile, goodbye from the man in the attic.
Widowmaker is next up now. Widowmaker Too Late to Cry, which is the second Widowmaker album, which came out in 1977. Now, so you may be thinking, I heard of Widowmaker, but I can't remember who they are, or I've never heard of them. They were a very, very short-lived semi-supergroup type thing. They were sort of almost built as a supergroup because a lot of them had been in other bands before, but the bands that they'd been in weren't necessarily great, big, massive bands, if you like. The guitar player Ariel Bender, who some people will know as Luther Grosvenor. He'd been in Motley Hoople. Hugh Lloyd Langton was the other guitarist. He'd been in Hawkwind. Drummer Paul Nichols, he'd been in Lindisfarne. And then you got the bass player Bob Daisley, who he got his glory days still to come, obviously going on to be in Rainbow for a short while, and then with Ozzy Osbourne on and off for quite a while, and also in Uriah Heep for a bit as well. Initially, the initial singer was a chap called Steve Ellis from that band Love Affair, who everybody always gets stuck at pub quizzes when that song comes on and it's, oh, crikey, who are they? And nobody can remember who they are. I've forgotten the title of the song now. If I can figure out what it is and I'll put it up on the bottom of the screen before the end. But that's it. Anyway, Steve Ellis from Love Affair. He bailed out after the first album. Now, I've never listened to that first. I've not got a copy. I've never heard it, so I don't know whether it's any good. By the time this second album came along, I've got a copy of this one, an original pressing of this with a nice gatefold sleeve with a rather dodgy band photo in there where they look like a bunch of cutthroats and desperados rather than a rock band. And it was almost with this as if they didn't quite know what they were supposed to be. Whether they were just supposed to be a straight-up rock band or whether they were still trying to hang on to the coattails of glam rock or whether they were even trying to create something else entirely. So it's a bit of a mishmash, really. The new singer they brought in, John Butler, is very much out of the school of Robert Plant. You can tell that he based his style on Robert Plant quite a lot. It's evident in quite a few of the tracks, and it's one of those albums where you look at it and you see the cover and you see the titles and you look at the pictures of the band and you pretty much know what you're going to get before the needle drops on to the vinyl. The title track's the first track, and that's a sort of it's got a Thin Lizzy sort of sound to it. Maybe that's probably due to the fact that it's got a twin guitar. Anything rocky with a twin guitar sound tends to either fall towards Thin Lizzy or Whitesnake, doesn't it? So it does to me anyway. That's probably one of the best tracks on the album. There's another one which was written by Ariel Bender, Luther Grosvenor. Here Comes the Queen, that's sort of an acoustic Led Zeppelin style track, which it really does highlight the sort of Robert Plant pretensions. And The Hustler is also a track which is very interesting, because I would say now, I want to challenge people here, I reckon it's the only song that is put out as a genuine, straight up, 100% rock song, but it's got a steel drum solo in it. Yeah, now that's made you want to listen, hasn't it, just to see where that comes from. It came as a real surprise. I can tell you the first time I heard it, I thought, what's going on here? It sounds okay, though. It's a bit different. And incidentally, just to give him a name check, the steel drummer, although he wasn't a steel drummer, he was a man playing a steel drum, Miguel Baradas, got to be the only man to have ever played a steel drum solo on a mid-70s rock album. But there you go. There's a couple of tracks that are not that brilliant. Pushing and Pulling is is a bit painful. Ariel Bender's doing the singing on that one. Maybe John Butler thought, I don't want to sing that one. It's not very good. I don't know. But that's one of the weaker tracks for me. Sadly, as well, there's a Bob Daisley track, What a Way to Fall, which I don't think a great deal of. But the final track, Sky Blues, is another Led Zeppelin type track. It's pleasant enough, but as I said before, it's hardly original. It does sound like a band trying to sound a little bit like Led Zeppelin. Unsurprisingly, after this album, Widowmaker went their own way. They went off to do something else. As I've said before, Bob Daisley went on to be the bass player with Rainbow for just one album. He didn't actually play on the whole of that album, but I think he did do a fairly lengthy stint on tour. He was in Ozzy Osbourne's Blizzard of Oz band as well when Ozzy Osbourne first went solo, and I think he went back 2 or 3 times to work with Ozzy over the years. And he also was in Uriah Heep for a bit and carried on working with people like Lee Kerslake. And I think he also had a bit of a band with Steve Morse from Deep Purple for a while. I can't remember what they were called now. Living Loud, I think it was. So that gets us another little bit of a Purple connection. What about the rest of them? Well, what did they go on to do? Well, I've been able to find out a great deal, apart from the fact that we said Bob Daisley went off to do that. But Ariel Bender became a painter and decorator.
Thanks for watching. Please subscribe and give us a like if you enjoyed today's episode. See you soon.